I'm finally back in my Model 3 rear-wheel drive. We're not done traveling though. Tons of road tripping going on, so stay tuned for that. But as many of you know, I have a rear-wheel drive Model 3, which is rocking the lithium iron phosphate battery pack, and Tesla recommends people to charge this battery pack to 100% at least once a week. For one, because it's a very high cycle life, so there's very little damage that can be done by charging to full all the time. Not the same story if you're buying a Model Y or Model S or X. Those have nickel manganese cobalt chemistries, which is why they encourage you to charge them just to 80% daily. Only charge to full if you're going on a road trip. But I was very curious what to do on this big trip that we've been taking. I was gone for 6 weeks and we were traveling overseas. Unfortunately, as much as I really wanted to, I could not take this car with me. So I thought, okay, while I'm away, should I just charge it to full, like at 100%, or should I let it sit at a low state of charge? And because we were traveling so much, we also needed to drive ourselves and family members to the airport we were leaving from, so I didn't really have the option to just leave it plugged in at home. If you are leaving your Tesla behind for an extended period, that's probably the best thing you could do, just plug it in and leave it there. But if you are leaving your car parked away from a charger for an extended period of time, I wanted to give you guys some tips and some things that I've learned from my own experience with LFP, including some of the no-nos, some things that Tesla tells you not to do. Unfortunately, I did. So we arrived at my friend's house at a pretty low state of charge, so we charged a little bit there, but ultimately they were going to be away from the house for an extended period anyway, and there's always a little bit of phantom drain on these vehicles because batteries, even when the car isn't moving or anything, the computer is on and there's little things that start to consume energy. So a few things that you definitely want to turn off if you're going to be leaving your Tesla for an extended time and you're trying to reduce that phantom drain as much as possible. The biggest energy consumer is Sentry mode by far, so certainly turn that off if you're trying to preserve battery life. Honestly, it was quite shocking when we first got the car. You know, we didn't really have a super secure way for it to be parked, so we left on Sentry mode when we first got it, but we quickly realized through the Charge Stats app, you know, previously when we'd taken trips and left the car at home plugged in, we noticed that the charge limit on the app, you know, you can't set it below 50%. So if you leave your car plugged in, whether you schedule it to charge or not, it's still going to want to charge up until it hits at least 50%. And Sentry mode was consuming 4 to 5 kilowatt hours a day, which may not sound like a lot, but after like leaving the car behind for a month or something, if you're in California and you're paying, I don't know, 25 cents a kilowatt hour, that's $1 a day, which translates to, you know, about $30 a month, sometimes more, just to have Sentry mode turn on. So if you're leaving it behind and it's not going to be plugged in, Sentry mode, definitely turn that off. Another one is cabin overheat protection. So this is a cool feature if you're just driving around your car in your daily life. You know, you don't want the interior cabin to get too hot. So by default, I believe it will even kick on when the temperature inside the car exceeds 100 degrees or 110 degrees. You can customize it within the app, but that will, of course, turn on the HVAC, so that's going to use more energy. So if you're going to be gone for several months or longer, I would turn that off. It sucks, yes, that the interior is going to get super hot depending on where you park it, but a more passive solution, I would say, is like those windshield covers, those window visors that make it so, you know, for one, people also can't look inside your car while you're away, but also that can kind of help protect the interior dashboard and materials from the sun beating down on it for extended time. So that's just another feature you're definitely going to want to turn off. And the good news is you can turn both of these features off from the mobile app. So if you just parked your car at an airport and you're going to be leaving it for a long time, or you parked it at a friend's house or whatever, that's certainly something that's going to help prolong your battery life. And the last one is probably not a huge one, but it's one that I think more people should be aware of, at least, is the passive phone key option. So this, I'm pretty sure you can only change through the mobile app, but essentially a really cool feature of Tesla's is that you don't need a dedicated key fob. You can just use your phone and the mobile app as a mobile key, but in doing that, your car is constantly looking for your phone in the form of Bluetooth. So as your phone gets closer to the car, it detects, oh, hey, there's that familiar Bluetooth signal. I'm gonna boot up the car now and unlock it so that when the owner comes to pull on the door handle, the door actually opens. Well, that's a cool feature, but it does mean that Bluetooth is on with the car, and if you're leaving it for an extended period, I do think that drains a little bit more juice because the car is still going, where's my owner? Like, when is he gonna come back? The car doesn't really know know when it should look for you and when it shouldn't. So by turning off that phone key passive feature, it basically just tells the car, turn off Bluetooth, which saves energy, and you don't have to wait around for me. Like, you can still get in the car, assuming you still have the physical key card, and you can turn it back on from the mobile app once you connect to the car. But that brings me to the last thing that will consume a little bit more energy from your Tesla over the long haul: checking on the car through the mobile app. So this could also include if you have an iOS widget on your iPhone, like a little tab that's showing your state of charge and your controls and everything. Your phone has to connect to a server from Tesla, and then that server connects to your car, and every time you open the app or even your widget sources for the latest data on your car, that boots up the car's internal computer. And yes, it doesn't use a ton of energy, but again, we're talking about long-term storage here. So if you're leaving it for an extended period, try not to check the app all too often. Like, once every couple of days isn't gonna hurt it, but it's the kind of people that try to check in on their app and look on the state of charge or look at the interior cabin temperature. If you start checking it like every hour, that's gonna boot up the car a lot more regularly and drain the battery a little bit faster. So by not checking the app too frequently, turning off the phone key option, turning off Sentry mode, and turning off cabin overheat protection, when you do all of those things, you know, I have a Tesla with the smallest battery pack available, about 60 kilowatt hours, and we were still able to maintain, you know, our starting percentage when we left the country was just at 50%, and by the time we got back, it had only dropped around 10%, and we were gone for about 6 weeks. So maybe I could have done a little bit better, because I was checking on the referral credits. Thank you, by the way, for people using the referral code in the description when ordering your Tesla. But unfortunately, you have to track all of those credits in the loot box, which is in the Tesla app. So I was probably checking it more than I needed to, but roughly what we were seeing that I think you guys are probably going to experience if you have a longer range Tesla, because you have a bigger battery pack. If you turn off all those features, I think you may be looking at like 1% phantom drain per week, which in my opinion is really freaking good, because that essentially means that, like, you could charge your car to full if you wanted to, and basically you could leave your car parked for over a year, hypothetically, and still have some charge remaining on the inside. Now, I don't recommend that per se, but it just gives you a perspective on how little energy the car actually consumes when it's just sitting there and it's off and not doing too much. And thankfully, after all that time waiting around and the car being stuck around 50 to 40%, we came back to it. I took out my key card and tapped it on the side, and the car lit right up. I was a little bit concerned that we might have some 12-volt battery issues, you know, to just have a vehicle that hasn't moved for 6 weeks, but nope, the screen lit up right away. And it might take a bit longer if you have an Intel-based older Tesla. We have a 2022 Model 3s with the AMD Ryzen processor, which is a little bit faster, so it booted up very quick and everything was fine. There was a software update available, but for the most part, yeah, it just kept running and we didn't really notice anything too different. The weird thing, though, when it comes to storing an LFP Model 3 is I was a bit worried about what happens to your battery if you don't charge it to 100% once a week. And from what I've gathered online, Tesla doesn't make it incredibly clear as to why you should charge to 100% every week, but from what I've heard from others, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, the main reason Tesla wants you to charge to 100% at least once a week is because the LFP battery pack has the same voltage no matter what the state of charge is. And with other battery packs that are using nickel manganese cobalt, like all your long-range Teslas and the Model S and X, those vehicles have a voltage sag as the state of charge decreases, which means the car is able to understand how much energy is in the battery pack based on the pack voltage. And since LFP has the same voltage whether at a low charge or a high charge, the battery calibration system starts to get a bit inaccurate if you don't charge it to full once a week, which the way I interpreted that means that the car may say it has 50% or 40% battery, when in reality it might not be all that accurate because there's some losses and some energy consumed that the computer in the car doesn't exactly count. Because they can't rely on that voltage sag to figure out your state of charge, charging it to full basically resets that management system, because the battery pack, of course, has to kick off and stop charging once you get it to full. So that resets the computer and says, okay, you're at a full state of charge, and then they know how to estimate based on your energy consumption, how much energy you have left. So our car did not hit 100% for over 6 weeks, and I was a little bit worried about that. I was like, okay, we're gonna get in our car, and I think we should go supercharge, even if we don't need to, because while the car may claim it has 40% or 42%, we should probably not trust that number because it may be a tad inaccurate. And we supercharged pretty quickly and didn't notice any massive issues, but we didn't supercharge to full because we kind of got home super late. Got to the car around midnight. We were supercharging around 1 a.m. We were tired. It was a long flight. We wanted to get home and everything, but later on, when we had a little bit more time and we found a faster supercharger, we said, okay, the manual wants us to charge to 100% once a week. We should do it. So we plugged in, and even though it took forever, and Tesla doesn't really recommend you do it at a supercharger, we charged it all the way to 100%. And when I checked the range estimator, it said 264, which is pretty much on par with what it was last time we charged to full. So I didn't really notice any range loss. And at that second supercharger, we arrived at like 9%. So thankfully, the car did not prematurely shut off. Maybe it would have if we tried to get it any lower. But I'm guessing that it's just a general guideline to encourage people to charge to 100% once a week, because truthfully, we didn't do it for over a month and a half and didn't really notice any significant range loss, and we didn't notice that the car was like running out of energy faster or anything. Nothing really went horribly wrong, and I don't recommend it. So now that I'm back home, I'm definitely gonna go back to charging 100% at least once a week, sometimes twice. But I just didn't want to make any of you paranoid out there that like the car was gonna stop working, or you would experience massive range loss, or the car dying at a state of charge that's not 0%. Like, of course, that would suck if the car thought it had 5% battery left and it turned out it didn't. That would be super frustrating. So let me be the guinea pig for you with my car. Don't try this at home, kids. But there you go. Hope that will be helpful for those of you who are traveling overseas and need a way to park your Tesla. And if you've experienced anything else with leaving your Tesla behind long term, feel free to share that advice down in the comments below. I'm sure other people will appreciate it. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. It seriously helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.